The Championship playoffs, epic, tense, dramatic, brutal. They are the way we finish each and every second tier season. But are they about to be shaken up? According to a report from Matt Slater of The Athletic, certain Championship owners want them extended. Let me know your thoughts down there in the comments. You can probably tell from my intro, I bloody love the playoffs. They are absolutely fantastic. And for those of you who are not in the know or can't quite remember, at the end of every championship season, the top two are promoted automatically to the Premier League. And then it is third place versus sixth in a two-legged semi-final, fourth versus fifth in a two-legged semi-final, with the higher ranking teams getting home advantage in the second leg. And then it is a one-off shootout at Wembley between the winners. I think it's great. I think it's wonderful. I think it takes us down to sixth place, which, according to my maths on my pad here, is the top 25% of the league get the chance. You have to be in that top 25% rather to get the opportunity to go and play off for the Premier League. And I think it suits all needs. You know, we get some drama at the end of the season. I know some people will say, oh, it's all about TV and money and eyeballs. And yeah, maybe there's a large element of that. But I think they're fantastic. And I'll be quite honest, doing this job, the only people that don't like the playoffs are A team who's lost in the playoffs, fans of those teams, or B, just before the playoffs, a fan of a team that's finished in third place. And they don't want the jeopardy for their team because there is the most jeopardy, the most to lose for the team that's finished third and the most to gain for the team that's finished sixth. What is Matt Slater saying is being suggested here? Well, these playoffs under the new proposals would go down to eighth place. So that would be the top 33% of the division would have an opportunity, or rather you'd have to get into the top 33%. So Blackburn 7th and Millwall 8th last year, who just missed out. Millwall, to be fair, 66 points, only 2 off Bristol City, but historically a low total. Potentially, under these new sort of proposals, Millwall with 66 points could be playing in the Premier League right now as we speak, had the proposals been enacted and Millwall gone on and won the playoffs. What would 8th place have to do? Well, the suggestion is that 3rd and 4th are ring-fenced and that an eliminator game is brought in for 5th, 6th, 7th and 8th. Therefore, 5th would play 8th in a one-off game at the home of 5th. So that would have been Coventry versus Millwall last season. 6th would play 7th. That would have been Bristol City versus Blackburn at Bristol City. I think we all agree that higher team should indeed get home advantage. A single one-off game, and then the winners of those games would then go on to essentially what the normal playoffs are, would be a two-legged semi-final with the higher ranking team playing home second. And I would think, I don't know this for a fact, that it would be 6th versus 7th, who would go and play 3rd, and 5th versus 8th. The winners of those games would go and play 4th. Obviously, wouldn't necessarily be fair on 3rd to get potentially 5th place when they could get 8th place. So you'd think they'd go against 6th or 7th, which the average spread of who they could play would then be lower. You've got to try and give some kind of advantage to the league table. Although, do you? And that's where we get mass debate about the playoffs each and every year. And I'm not joking. It is literally every year as we're coming into the playoffs, I'll get comments, and it is heavily skewed in terms of teams that are finishing 3rd, that they say that the top 3 should go up. And yes, on league sporting merit, Team 3 is the 3rd best team in the league. 3 teams get promoted. I kind of can see that argument, but Team 3 was also not good enough to be in the top 8.33% of the league. So you can argue it the other way. Why should they go up, hey? Although we're about to argue that someone 33% of the way down could go up. I'm a big believer in the fact that the top two going up automatically and being the only team, I think that's absolutely fine. I think that is enough. I don't think it should be, you should be going down. Where would you be? Sort of 12.5, top 12.5%. And then you're going to get the entertainment argument where, A, that would remove the end of season competition, wouldn't it? And B, this is the argument, and I think the guy we're talking about here is Peter Risdale of Preston. And, you can see why if you were the owner of Preston, let me just bring their history up here on FootMob, that you might want this because in the past, well, in their recent run in the Championship, they have finished 7th, 9th, 10th and 9th. So they would have been in once and they would have been very close. They've also finished 10th and 11th in that time. They would have been a lot closer in terms of getting in there. But the point I was going to make is when we reach the end of the season, and we always talk about this on the predictions and on the hot takes, we say which teams are on the beach. Well, if you extended the playoffs out another 2 places, then maybe it would only be the last round or the last 2 rounds, say, where teams would be on the beach. And if you run that argument for last season, so, last season wasn't a great season for it because there's a 5-point gap between 9th and 11th. But certainly down to 10th there, Middlesbrough and West Brom were 1 win away from the top 8. So basically, if you're in the top half, probably with 2 rounds to go, the likelihood is, unless you're obviously over 6 points behind at that point, you might have a chance of getting into the playoffs. Now, as I say, I bloody love the playoffs and I'm pretty defensive about it being changed. I didn't used to love the playoffs because in the late 90s, my team, Ipswich, lost in the playoffs 3 years in a row. And I thought they were the most dreadful, unfair thing ever. But stop. We cannot do motivated reasoning on this. And let's be honest, I had my feelings hurt because I wanted my team to win. And that is no argument for the playoffs not to exist. So I'm very defensive about them just purely because I get so many of these comments each year from the fans of teams. And it's always the teams that are in third place. I'll be quite plain about it, saying, "Oh, third should just go up," and this is a nonsense. And I disagree, and it's subjective, and nobody's right and nobody's wrong. That's my opinion. I think if you open your mind out to looking at the league as a whole, and the more teams that can possibly get promoted, I think is a good thing. And I think the less dead rubbers, I think, is a good thing. And English football needs shaking up, doesn't it? We've spoken about the orthodoxy, particularly in the Premier League with the 17 over the last, we're into season 4 now. We've spoken about the ridiculous chasm exacerbated by the parachute payments. It's very, very difficult. And I think sometimes the odd little safe grenade needs to be thrown in there and add in a bit of jeopardy, add in some extra teams in there, a little bit of spice might shake things up a little bit. So I must admit, I did see this report and my reflexive defensive action was don't touch the playoffs. Don't do it. But I don't think I mind this proposal. Look, if you are a team that finishes in 5th or 6th, then you have a home game against 7th or 8th. And you've only got yourself to blame if you lose it. And this is the argument I've always run for 3rd versus 6th. If you finish in 3rd place and you can't win a 2-legged, not just one game, anything can happen over 90 minutes, but 180 does skew it surely in favour of the, quote, better team, because it's a 2-legged cup tie rather than just the blood and thunder of a one-off game where you could just get a red card after 5 minutes and your season's up in smoke straight away. But yeah, if you can't get past 6th place, then I don't know. That's on you. And then a one-off game in the final. Hey, it's tournament football. And if you don't want any jeopardy in sport and you don't want an outcome that could potentially be brutal, then make sport boring. Make it like the Premier League. I'm a fan of a team that was there. So I actually don't mind it. And in terms of the back end of the season, I mean, this is probably the thin end of the wedge in terms of the argument. The less dead rubbers at the end of the season. I don't know whether that's more important than, you know, giving the league table some credence. The league table has to have some credence. It can't just be a random cup competition. And I do argue when people use the word lottery, which is complete nonsense about the playoffs, because it does favour, if you look at the results and the home advantage and extra time potentially being played at home, look at who comes out the winners in the end, particularly over the last 15 years. It was a bit wild in the 90s, but I think since people have got wizened to the format, it's certainly gone with the league table. So, long and the short of it is, I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. And I think if you take your club supporting hat off, look, I'm an Ipswich fan, and they've lost in the playoffs, I think, more than anybody, particularly at Championship. I think they've been in 8 times, Ipswich, and only won once. I think Derby is the same there. I know Preston have got a terrible record, but there's a lot of League One or some League One stuff in that. So, you know, if I have my Ipswich hat on, I should hate the playoffs. And this season particularly, my team's got parachute payments. So you want it to go with the orthodoxy and the money if you're a selfish, just look through the prism of the team you support. If you look at it from the big picture, I do see the argument that more teams involved, more drama, less dead rubbers, whilst protecting the sanctity of the league table. It's only a one-off game for 7th and 8th, and they have to play away. 5th and 6th would now have to play an extra game to 3rd and 4th. So you can almost argue it's protecting 3rd and 4th even more in terms of those people who obsess about the league table and want that to mean everything and remove the jeopardy for the team in 3rd place. Anyway, this is a good one. This is completely subjective, Ben, and whatever I say isn't right or isn't wrong either. It's just an opinion, each to their own. I like salt and vinegar. You like cheese and onion. Nobody's right. Nobody's wrong. You go and eat your cheese and onion, and I'll have my salt and vinegar. I prefer ready salted. But let me know your thoughts on this potential proposal for the playoffs. And yeah, I don't mind it. And I never thought I would be saying a potential change to the playoff system that I would be endorsing. Go on, get your views down there in the comments on potential playoff reform.